Hmm. Thank you so much for joining me today. Can you please introduce yourself and the short title to your story?
Of course. My name is Ryan Penley. I am a recovered or recovering, however, some people they look at it differently as far as I'm always in recovery, that type of thing. I agree with that, but I also agree that I'm on the better end of that journey. Like I'm not in the trenches any longer, and so that being said, I'm here to share my story about how it all came about, and the title to the story, if you will, is "Man Up Sober Up." You have my book here in the background. It's the title of my book, and then the book is also my launch pad to sharing my story in hopes of helping out people that it's a tough problem, obviously, substance abuse, and I found some success. It's not the success, but I feel compelled to reach out and share what worked, and it's all in hopes that people could benefit from it. So that's what I'm all about these days.
I love it. So, Ryan, tell me, what was your life like in your earliest years? What was your family life like? What was your normal? Where did you live?
Right, right. Yeah, I guess it's the genesis of of how it all came about, right? So I grew up in Orlando, Florida, which is where I'm at currently, and my childhood was suburbia. We made ends meet, but we didn't go hungry, but we're in kind of an affluent neighborhood, but we weren't necessarily affluent. So, but the struggle was like it was there, but it wasn't like really dire or anything like that. And what's relevant to I guess my journey is like the use of like substances and that type of thing. And so I was raised by my grandparents because my mom and my father they had me at a pretty young age. My mother was 17. I believe my father was also 17. He might have been 18. Nonetheless, they didn't necessarily, they either couldn't cut it or, there wasn't anything formal that happened except for my grandparents pretty much took over my upbringing. So I was raised by my grandparents, and my mother was around, mostly. However, she's currently in active addiction, and my father's path also took the same kind of route. He struggled with substances as well. But as far as the home goes, like where I was raised and what I saw on a daily basis was a little bit different. It was like the traditional '50s alcoholic, uh, husband. He goes to work, he owns a business, he has two martinis for lunch. He gets home, he finishes a bottle of scotch, but there was no beatings and there was no yelling and there was no, he wasn't like blatantly inebriated, and they didn't talk much, my grandparents, but I guess they got the job done, according to those standards, those mid-century standards. And so uh you know substances were around. I wouldn't say that it wasn't super toxic. I mean, I was aware at an early age that my mother had her issues, and things were kind of off when I was with her, as opposed to my grandparents, because they were a little bit more calm, and so they weren't perfect, but it beat the hell out of my being with my mother, who was still rather young, and she was also rather tumultuous. And so, but for the most part, being in my grandparents' home, it wasn't all that bad. You know what I mean? I feel like they showed up, and they did. Even in my book, I reference like they showed me what unconditional love was. Now, were they like hyper aware of their own feelings? Did they go to therapy? Did they work on things that way? Not necessarily, but they did what they knew to be the best, and so for that, like I did learn, I learned that they love me very much. So I had that going for me.
Yeah, sometimes with time, you can look back and just appreciate the love that was there and give grace for things that weren't so perfect, right? We're all just here on this rock floating in space trying to do our best. So I understand.
Right.
What time frame are we looking at when you grew up in Orlando?
So yeah, I was you know, I was here. We might be jumping a little bit further ahead than you intended, but like I was in Orlando until I was 21. And then I went to Las Vegas for work as a bartender. So if you could imagine a recovery journey, you could foresee the paintings on the wall, the stories on the wall, if you will, about what unfolded at like that age range. But let's rewind a little bit there. There were some hints into the substance use, and when I was like in high school, I had somebody anonymously, they put kind of volunteered me into some programs like at school, and there's people like kind of reaching out. I was unreceptive. I was I definitely wasn't in a place of maturity to recognize that there was hints of some issues. And like I had mentioned, my grandparents, they weren't super participative in like the proactive approach to like mental health and things of that nature. They were a tough generation of like, shut up and get it done kind of thing. And not that they told me like that. I think that
Right.
there's like the internal moniker, if you will. Like they're
Just
just, don't
generally,
complain.
yeah, generationally speaking, that's kind of where they were from.
Yeah, yeah. So like they weren't they weren't sitting me down and trying to get to the root cause of me drinking beers or smelling like beer or smelling like marijuana or anything like that. Like it was like, let's just not talk about it and and keep like
I hope it
moving,
goes
if you
away.
will. Right,
So,
exactly.
so how old were you when you started experimenting with these substances?
13.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hanging out with the wrong crowd or intentionally sought it out?
I was the wrong crowd. It was I tell people that, at 13, it was like I drank some beers and all of a sudden I had enough confidence to approach girls and I'm like, and at that point it's like I only saw upside, right? It's like,
Yeah.
I wasn't suffering from hangovers, or I wasn't like showing up late to work. It was like, this is awesome, like
Good courage.
this is the greatest thing ever. I'm going to do as much of this as possible. And so I did. And and I did so to the point where I carried it. I guess I managed to get myself into like the epicenter of all substance abuse. Las Vegas. It was like,
Right.
right.
So did you make it through high school?
I did. I did
Okay.
make it through high school, and I was rather put together, even up until the point of leaving and going to Las Vegas, and many years into living in Las Vegas. I was rather responsible. I nearly graduated college before I had left to go to Las Vegas. The opportunity that I had out there, I had to go right then, and so I did. And but yeah, I was I was as far as my family was concerned, I was doing well. Like I was independent, and I had most of my things in order, and I had a little bit of money, and I was in decent shape, and so I was checking off a lot of boxes.
Yeah. Okay. So you moved to Vegas, you're 21. What year is this?
2002,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
Right. So yeah, I showed up there, and again, like I was there for 11 years. And so that's anybody that is familiar with Las Vegas, it has like a finite amount of time. Some people only last a couple hours. It's like, get out of here, you're gonna die. Like it's a place like that. It's a place like that that it can eat people up. And so
Yeah.
it was it didn't eat me up for some time. And so when I was rather young, I was still doing okay. I saved a great deal of money. I started to travel quite a bit, and for anybody that doesn't know, like if you are bartending, that's kind of the place that you go to reach like the highest, the pinnacle of like making cash. And so I did all right financially, and I considered it a profession at the time. And so I was doing well by a lot of objective standards. People would say that, but through this period, there was the lurking substance use. At that point in my early 20s, it was still kind of, I was still keeping it at bay, if you will. Like I was still kind of balancing it out with good physical health, and of course, in your early 20s, it's kind of tough to get into real trouble with your physical health, right? Because you're rather resilient, and so I was, and that kept a lot of like the substance use, on like not red alert, like it was like I felt like I had control. I thought I had control. I think if anybody that wasn't in my circles, who also most of them were all doing drugs and drinking, like, somebody from the outside looking in, especially maybe with a professional opinion, would say, "Hey, like there's you got some issues growing there in the background."
What was your first like real realization that it was becoming a problem that you couldn't quote unquote manage?
Well, I well, I'll say it like this. The drinking and drugs seemed to be recreational, and then I had broken my leg like in 2008,
Mm.
and so I broke my tibia and fibula, snapped my leg, basically snapped the whole leg, and then they had to put titanium in there. And well, I went to a doctor, and at this point in time, this is before the opioid epidemic is like recognized what
Yeah.
it was going on, right? So like I'd go into the doctor, and I was taking pills recreationally, right? And so people that knew me were like, "Hey, go to this doctor. He's gonna hook you up with all these pills," and he did. He gave me enough pills to kill a rhinoceros, and so I was instant addict, right?
Yep.
So and most people that know me and that are close to me, they saw that as like the hard left,
Yeah.
right? Like things were. And your question was, is when was it starting to become unmanageable? Well, most people that know me, because my vision was shit. I didn't know what the hell was going on. I thought I was just doing just fine. And the people that knew me, they're like, man, that's when things like really, really took off. And it makes sense too, because it's like I was basically handed pharmaceutical grade heroin for $5. It basically cost nothing, and I had a ton of like high grade drugs, available to me. It was the recipe for disaster.
Yeah, especially like trying to manage the pain and get back on your leg and do all the physical therapy and stuff. It's easy to justify, oh, well, I need this, right? And then before you know it, it's like, oh, I have to have this.
Oh yeah, and my medicine. Oh, it's my
Yeah.
medicine. Bullshit. It's like that's drugs. Like really, and not like man. Looking back, like it's like so wild that era, because they sent a nurse to my house that because I also had pancreatitis, right? Because of all the drinking. So they're
Goodness.
like, "Oh, don't worry. We're going to show you how to crush up your pills, put them into water, and then inject them into your lower intestine so you don't have to digest them." And I'm all like, "Oh, that sounds great." So they
Holy
sent
crap.
they sent this lady to my house. And I remember my best friend was in the kitchen, and he remembers this. He speaks of this as being like, he saw it in my eyes. Like the woman, she's like, "Okay, you take your pills." She took like 3 pills, crushed them up, put them in a thing, right? So now it's a powder. She put it into water, and there's a tube, I had a feeding tube into my stomach, and I injected the drug. It went, I mean, it was like hitting a vein, really, and like
Wow.
boom. And so like they sent a person over there to show me how to increase the efficacy of the drug that was already highly addictive. I mean, like I said, that time, that era, it's like, man, it's like looking back, of course, it seems like so clear, but man, it was really going on. Like that was like, and I had the green lights, like you mentioned. It's
Yep.
like, hey, I've got the green lights here because I need this stuff, clearly, because this woman is a professional. She showed me how to do this. It's like, no way, man.
That's all
It was
kinds of
bad news.
twisted.
Right, 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 right.
Super not healthy. Okay, so you learn how to mainline these drugs, apparently.
Right.
What goes from there? Like, does your life just instantly fall apart?
I'm kind of resilient, so it didn't happen instantaneously, but it it's started becoming a problem exponentially. You know, I got fired. Well, the drugs weren't enough. Like I was talking about how much there was, and it was copious amounts of drugs. But when you're a drug addict, it's never enough. So I
Right.
was going through my prescription, and I needed more. And then I started stealing money at work, and then of course I got fired. And now my insurance is gone. So now what do I do? You know, what I didn't do is I didn't start doing street heroin, which is what
Good.
many people do. Many people
Yes.
do. That's the path that happens to a lot of people, and it makes sense. It's like, well, I can't get the pharmaceutical good stuff any longer. This is, the street substitute. I'll take
The
that,
same
please.
thing.
Right. And then now, of course, we know the horrific and deadly additives that are being, included in so also another catastrophe. But for me, it was I was in Las Vegas, and so now I don't have a job and things. I had little bouts with sobriety. I tried to give it a shot, but it was nonetheless still a struggle. So the answer is right, like geographically get better, right? Like I'll just go somewhere else. But the old adage is that you bring yourself with you, right? So here I go. I go to Colorado, and so now I I'm no longer on pills, and I decided to I just really cranked up the partying. So I'm in a much smaller city, but man, like it was a smaller town. But if you really want narcotics, and you can ask people for them, you'll find them. And so that's what I did. I went to Colorado, and I started just doing a lot of cocaine and meth, heroin, what pretty much anything I could get a hold of. And this is where things got really out of control health wise, and I was so damn numb. I couldn't even feel how depressed or bipolar, whatever. I was diagnosed with several things, but this is all going on, but I was too damn numb to really. I couldn't, anybody that was diagnosing me, like, good luck with that. It's like I was steadily under the influence almost like the entire time. And so the next rock bottom moment, I guess, if you will, like I went into a coma. I had developed diabetes because my pancreas was damaged, and I went to a coma for 7 days. And then uh, the crazy thing is that same friend I told you that saw that nurse teach me that, I woke up out of the coma in Colorado, and he was there. He was in the hospital. He has seen the full circle. He has seen the entire journey, and it's sadly enough, he's one of the few relationships I know I don't fully have back, because I just caused him too much pain, and that was a part of it. I mean, the guy has seen me, die. He has seen me in several situations, and I fear and know, like, I just put him through too much. We still kind of talk, but those types of scenarios they're hard on people, and it wasn't necessarily as hard on me. Why? Because I'm out of it. I'm in a
Yeah, you
coma. I
choked
don't
up.
know what's going on. He's looking at me, feeling all of these things.
Yep.
I'm like, I wake up, I'm like, oh, hey, good to see you, man. And he's like, I've been looking at you for 7 days, wondering if you are ever gonna wake up, thinking that you're gone. And so, it's a sad part. I won't stop though. I still want him to be a part of my life, and I hope one day, in time, like you had mentioned, in time, things can be better, right? So,
Yeah,
but yeah,
sometimes those boundaries are hard because you have to, like, boundaries are the place where you can hold space for yourself and honor yourself, but still love someone where they're at. right? So, yeah, repairing those relationships takes time and effort.
Yeah, yeah. And he doesn't hate me, like, but it's like I can see it, I can see that he's like, he looks at me and it's just it's painful. So
Absolutely.
but
I
yeah,
can relate because I've been on your friend's side of things and it's not fun. But for the people that I can't be close with, because they still use and engage in that kind of behavior, I just love them from afar and I keep them in my thoughts and prayers. And I hope someday that they can find what they need, to find that sobriety, right? Because it's hard won. As easy as it is to slide into substance use, it's
right.
twice as hard to crawl out of it, for
Oh
sure.
yeah. Yeah. And um it's the level of the magnitude of the decision. It's so large and looming um when you're in it, and it's just it's it's such a hard thing. And it's an internal thing, internal, well, that, and then also spiritually, it's like the only people that, in my opinion, are really involved. Well, if you want to say people, one person and a god. So it's like, you know uh you being the caring friend, your ability to really put a dent in that thing is not very big. Like you're doing the right thing. You're loving from afar. You have boundaries, depending on what that relationship allows for those boundaries, and it seems like you're clear on that, and that's what you got to do, and that's fantastic. But all the work is on them, and so it's so dark. And I had mentioned my mother. She's currently she's actively in addiction, and I go through the thought exercise sometimes with my sister. I'll say, what would happen if she just called and said, "Hey, listen, I fucked up. Like, help me." Like, I when I think about it and I talk to her about it, it's so far away because she's so far away. Like, she's not even near admitting anything. She's still fighting for that lifestyle, and it's become so sad because she's much older now, and it's like the likelihood of her saying that is very low. But nonetheless, I sometimes wonder what it would be like if it were possible, or for her to say that, or what would I do. But there's not much I can do now in this position because she basically has to say that first,
Yep.
because I know what it looks like when you try to just go and save somebody. It
Yeah.
doesn't go well typically.
Yeah. Like you can love them with all the pure heart that you have, but they're the ones that have to make the decision, right? Like I used to say, if I could have quit for him, I would have, you know? I did everything else, but I couldn't quit for him. So, yeah. So after you wake up from this coma and you think to yourself, "Oh, hey friend, it's so nice to see you." Like, was that your shift? What happened? Did you go rock bottom again? Oh no, you're frozen. So as you woke up from your coma, was that a changing point for you, or did you stay the course?
So, right. And this is, I can't tell you how many people are like, they're like, "Oh, well, that's when it turned all around." And I'm like, well, I'm kind of, I'm a bit of a jerk. So I decided I wanted to make sure I really, really found that hard granite
Mm,
surface at the rock bottom. And so I came back to Florida, and with my family, small family. I don't have a lot of family, but um it wasn't, again, I brought myself with me, so I still wasn't out of the woods yet, and I spent like another 5 years. I was homeless. I was stuck at this point. I'm trying to manage diabetes, but not doing such a great job. And things, I had no money for narcotics, but I to get plastic bottle booze at the liquor store is probably about the cheapest way to really mess yourself up that exists. And so that was my diet, if you will. It's a plastic bottle vodka. And so, yeah, it got worse. I managed to get, I had mentioned my mother, um, being in active addiction. Well, we had the great idea of trying to live together. Bad
Oh, okay.
idea. And so I ended up getting arrested for, she accused me of attempted murder with a deadly weapon. And I was in jail. I was never convicted because my mom being my mom, I'm not the first person she's accused of like a head murder. She accused my biological father of trying to murder her with his boots to her head, like stomping her head. And, whatever she's got going on, it's like, it's, it's happened. She accused her own mother of trying to murder her. And so I'm not trying to say, now, let me be very clear here. I don't remember what happened. So was there an altercation? Yes. Do I know exactly what happened? No. Did I try to murder her? I'd like to think not. However, I wasn't in the right frame of mind to even defend myself. So
Right.
it's like, if I'm sitting here telling you there's no way that didn't happen, well, there's some type of truth in there. I don't know what it is though. And
Right.
so, but nonetheless, I was arrested and she accused me of that. And I went to jail. And so that was, uh, that was, maybe a rock bottom moment. And I think a lot of people have asked me, like, oh, well, when was rock bottom for you? And I'm like, as you could tell, there's like not necessarily one event, but like maybe an era.
It's like it's not a rock bottom, it's like a rock canyon and you just keep falling down it.
Rock Canyon. Yes, this is a
Mhm.
little more accurate, right? And it's very long. It's like a
Very
very,
long, deep, rocky canyon.
yeah, the Grand Rock Bottom Canyon. Yeah, it's not a tourist spot. It's a
Mm-mm.
bad place. But yeah, it's a mixture, and I can't put a whole lot of weight on one more so than the other as far as the moments go. They all added up to a really shitty situation. So like,
Yeah.
I wasn't doing well. And so if you could take a silver lining from this, it was like I was no longer at a point of denial. It was just too damn clear. Like it's like you look around, it's like I'm homeless. I'm been in jail. My health is horrible, right? It's like there was no I was at least logical enough to know, like, there's no way I can say, oh no, I'm all right doing this. Like, no, it was very clear to me. Like, you got to do something, man. You've got a serious problem, and something needs to happen. And so, that didn't happen until after, like, some really dark moments where I had given up effort. I didn't make any like clear attempts on my life, but the desire to live was very low, and desperation didn't even really do justice for where I was at. It was just like, I felt like okay. Like every time I went like to drink a ton of alcohol, I would kind of do some like mental math, like, oh, well, I'm not feeling too good. This could be really bad for me. And I was like, okay, fine. Like that was kind of, where I was at before things got got better, but they didn't get better until I was Baker acted here in Florida. Like I don't even know how many times, well over 10. I want to say between 12 and 15 times. And a Baker Act in Florida is like, for anybody that doesn't know, it's where if you're risk of harming yourself or others, they put you in like a psychiatric hold. And so
Mm.
this happened a lot. And so now the good thing about that is it's 72 hours. So I had these like little windows of sobriety.
Right.
And um after quite a few of them, I started realizing I'm like, okay, I can use one of these windows to like kickstart a run at sobriety. And so I mean, clearly I failed many times, but eventually I got out one time, and I made an accountability plan with my cousin, and that's pretty much where it all where like the beginning of the recovery journey happened. some help from her, and some real commitment on my end. And so, yeah, we put a plan into place, and then that's pretty much when that happened.
What was your first step in the plan?
I got a breathalyzer and I gave it to her. Well, I'd already lived with her and I burned that bridge up good. And I pissed off her husband, and I was basically asked to not come back, right? And I was living with her. So I said, give me another shot. Here's this breathalyzer. I'll blow in it every day, and if I pop, I'm done. I'm out. And then in addition to that, it was so that was I was willfully being accountable. It wasn't the court telling me, it
Right.
wasn't anybody else telling me. It was my idea. It was something I was willing to do, ready to do. And then in addition, it was like go to therapy once a week, and then also go to AA once a week. The AA didn't really pan out for me, but and the breathalyzer, I never actually really used it, and I had a relapse in there, but it was short, and I got past it. We got past it, but it was that was what came with that effort was really accountability. That was it really.
You decided. Was there a thought or a reason you decided you wanted to try?
I mean, like like everything fell apart. I mean, this is actually a quote that's in my book. It's the first quote in my book. It's from a movie called The Martian, and so not that that's it's just the power of the quote. It rings very true in my mind. It's like everything fell apart on me, everything, and I said to myself, "This is it. This is it. This is where I end." Right, and then the caveat to that is like you can either accept that or you can get to work. And so I tried accepting that, and God kept me around. So when that didn't work, um, I got to work, and I actually fell in love with the work, and because of that, I am where I'm at now, and it's been glorious how my life has gotten better exponentially once I started the work. Humbly, I might add, right?
Yeah, I think when you do, when you decide that your life is going to be different, like things shift and can align for you, but you really have to make that decision yourself. You decide, then the world reacts, right?
Right, right. And then that's my favorite thing about the journey, or any journey really, sobriety, recovery, or anybody's journey. The path is like you make these decisions. It's this beautiful dance. It's a beautiful dance, like in the world. It's like you make a decision and you take a few steps, and it's different. And you're like, oh shit, I didn't plan. This wasn't part of the plan. And then the world is saying, oh yeah, but check all this. Everything's moving. And so then you adjust, and you make some moves. And that's what I had mentioned. Like I have fallen in love with that. I've fallen in love with that dance with the world and how it moves around our decisions. Um, and I think that's for me these days is what makes it an adventure.
What was something that surprised you about sobriety?
The layers of clarity,
Mm,
like the layers of clarity, and the experience now when I have conversations, even with very dear friends, um, and seeing all of them and having some reference point into my journey and my uh, my use and my recovery and all of it together, and I can recognize points in my life that I can kind of ping off of where they're at. And so when I say clarity, like I got, like I was mentioning, the 72 hours of being in a mental hospital. I was so desperate for that clarity at 72 hours. And and I thought to myself, okay, I can kind of think a little bit. But how you can think at 72 hours compared to a month is quite different than 6 months and then a year. And then it's like, well, damn, and like 2 years, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm thinking so much clearer than I was last year. And then the development the layers of clarity just seem to be never ending. And now that doesn't come without the work. Like I mentioned, like it's a lot of self-reflection and observation through whatever methods that I can find. But it's the how much clearer I get, and I look at somebody, especially people that I care about, and they're not tearing their lives apart. They're not like suffering immensely, and they're not ripping their bodies to shreds like I was, but I can see them. They still have this lingering, shackle, if you will, of maybe the lifestyle that includes drugs and alcohol or whatever it might be. And so it's an interesting thing, but yeah, it surprised me the clarity that I had gained throughout the entire journey.
I think maybe that clarity is related to how much you detoxify your mind, body, and spirit over time, right? Because it's all three. It's
Oh
your
yeah,
mind, I mean, physically, mentally, emotionally, all three of them require recovery and work all of the time.
right. And I agree wholeheartedly with this, the spiritual elements and that cleansing, but also what I guess here's another surprise was because you think like, okay, I've been sober for 72 hours. There's all these different benchmarks as to when they claim like alcohol is out of your system or
Mhm.
drugs are out of your system. But man, I would say that it's a lot longer than you read about. And maybe that's intentional. Maybe that's intentional to give people like, oh man, I've been sober a week. It's completely out of me. And maybe they do that to like kind of dangle the carrot, if you will, on the stick. Like, okay, make it to a week and you're gonna be all better. But looking back, I don't believe that's true. I think that to the extent that you use um when you are officially cleansed, let's put it this way. I would wake up every 4 hours. I would wake up every 4 hours because that's the point in time at which I would go through withdrawals. And I would either have to do drugs or drink to go back to sleep.
Wow.
And that went on for years, right? And then fast forward to I was sober for well over 2 years, and I still would wake up every 4 hours. I'd go to sleep, I'd wake up every 4 hours, and my body was still conditioned, if you will, or still under the influence, if you will. I mean, yeah, I guess the drugs were gone out of like my bloodstream, but it was like I was still having dreams about pills falling through my fingers. Like I have a dream they're going down the drain, and I'm like trying to keep them, grab them. That went on for a, a couple years after I'd gotten sober. So it was like, yeah, okay, it's not my blood, but man, it was still there. It's still there. And I'm suspecting in another year I'll be saying the same thing about now. That's just, kind of how I feel like it is.
You kind of have to reprogram your psyche, right? Like
Yes,
when you wake up in the morning, your first thought is, you know, goes to drugs or alcohol, and it's like, nope, I'm not doing that today. And you start that battle over every single day.
right. And now the battle, no, I will add that the battle gets less intense.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Like a
Like
muscle. You flex it and you get stronger at it.
yeah. And I call it the trenches, like early. It's
Mm.
like, man, it's a freaking fight. Like you said, it's like you gotta like, and I was there. Like I wake up, and it's like everything in my body is saying, go get that bottle, stick it into the air and let it run down your throat, right? Like my body's saying that because it wants that.
Yeah.
And it's a fight. It's a fight, but the fight gets easier. It does get easier to, in time, it gets easier to win those little battles.
How long have you been sober?
So it was March 31st, 2019. So over a little over 5 years now. Um, but yeah, it was like I said, the year was 1 year is a big one. I think it's a big one, and a lot of it has to do with other people's opinions. Like I would tell people I've been sober 6 months, and like they didn't quite believe it.
Mm.
Even doctors were kind of like, not really give me like the credit, you know. And then like I hit a year, then everybody started taking me a little bit more serious, and so I think that was a big one. And I think maybe just because people perceive a year as much more robust than 10 months or whatever. So,
Yeah,
but yeah, it's over 5 years now.
that's awesome. Congratulations. I'm happy that you have put in that work and that you're on this side of things. Tell me about some of the wins that you've had.
Oh yeah, this I get excited about this. Why I wrote this book, Man Up, Sober Up, and that just, I mean, it was a launch pad of creativity and sharing the story. I've started a podcast. It's called The Next Fix. It's I intend on speaking to people that once they've gotten sober, it's like, okay, well, I've gotten sober. Is there something else to this? Like, am I able to start a new career, or or whatever that may be? Like the next adventure, the next fix. And
Yeah,
so I've gotten married. I've got a 5 month old son, firstborn child. Yeah, there's quite a few things. I've been helping people out in different communities, and I've been coaching people, helping people figure out what I feel like I have a uh, somewhat of an authority, not the authority clearly, but I have some ground to stand on and say, hey, check this out. This works, and you can achieve this, that, or the other thing. And so I've been using that to help as much as I can, because like I had mentioned earlier in the show here, I was saying, like, if we as humans, if we solve hard problems, I feel like it's our responsibility and our due diligence to reach back to people in similar circumstances, and like and give a hand.
absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. So congratulations on all of those things. Those are big accomplishments. Like,
Yeah.
how do you spend your free time now? What do you do? Like, are you interested in learning? Do you go places still? Are you traveling? What's all that?
Right. Okay. Well, um, it's mostly the kid right now. Like the 5 months, like the first couple of months, I was like, "What the hell is happening?" I felt like this machines. Like, wake up, change the diaper, go to work. All right, buy that. Okay, get this. All right, do that. This appointment, see this doctor. I was just kind of like that. Now it's like that storm has kind of calmed down a little bit, and um, so yeah, these days I try to just my me time is just physical exercise. I get that going on every day, and that's huge. It's part of my life. And then after that, like, just kind of spending time with my kid, and trying to figure out how to be a dad. That's a big one. That's a big one. It's like, and be a husband. Because all of that happened in less than a year. I got the girl, and then the baby's on the way, then the marriage. And so all that kind of was happening in a very short period of time. But I like to stay busy.
Well, that's good. A 5-month-old will definitely keep you busy. You get the hang of it after a while. I've got two kids, so I think you'll be just fine.
Right, right. How old are they?
My son is 15 and my daughter is 10.
Wow. Yeah. You look very young.
So I'm 42.
You look really young. Oh, well, God bless you. God bless
You.
them. 15 is about to start driving. That's terrifying. See, I'm wrapping my head, because I think I've learned this. They're like, the separating all people into two buckets. You have kids or you don't. Like
Yes.
the me without kids, like, is crazy what my thoughts were like, and what they didn't include, and now what they include. Like, you tell me that, all I'm thinking about is like, oh, your son's gonna be driving. I never thought about that. Like, before my kid, I would have been like,
Right.
oh, great, nice, 15, that's great, like. But now I'm like foreseeing my future. I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah. So now it's time for you to figure out what your legacy is going to be, right? And how you're going to show up for your kids. It's a
right.
very different perspective. And being a parent is the hardest job I've ever loved, but love it, I do.
Oh man, can you say that again?
Parenting is the hardest job I have ever loved. It's
That's amazing. Like, I really, I think just the fact that you changed the last word to love instead of like did. I really like that. That's amazing.
Yeah,
And
it
awesome.
definitely has you looking forward towards the future, right? Like 10 years, you're gonna have a 10-year-old son. In 20 years, you're gonna have a 20-year-old son. Like, is he gonna get married? Is he gonna have kids? Are you gonna be a grandpa? You know? It's a
Right,
real
right.
fun thought process. All
And
also overwhelming.
it is, and you know what though? I've addressed this. A good friend of mine um, had asked me about what I'm planning on doing about like the substances and things of that nature.
Mhm.
And I think the move is to just, well, one, I don't have to worry about hypocrisy.
Right.
Because I always have thought like, man, it's kind of messed up if you're telling your kids not to do something and you're doing it. I don't want
Yes.
to be that guy. And then I'm going to be very transparent. I'm going to tell them. I'm going to let them know what had happened to me because of those choices. And I'm also not going to try to pretend like he's not going to encounter these things. I'm not going to try to protect him from them. I just want to arm him with the knowledge, and then also be the the role model.
I tell we talk about me and my kids talk about substance abuse all the time.
Oh
So
yeah.
yeah, because like my son, obviously, he's 15, so he's in high school and he's been exposed to this stuff since junior high at least, right? And so it's important to have those conversations before they are exposed to it, right? And so I would
Right.
tell my son, drugs can do this, they can do that. You notice people are on it by this. Look at the bad decisions, this person in your frame of reference has made. Well, obviously they you see how they party on the weekends and this, that, and the other thing. And this fentanyl stuff that's out right now, like it is so deadly, it is so insidious. Like,
Mm,
don't even smoke pot that you don't know where it came from because you
right.
just don't know. Like, and so I'm pretty sure my son's terrified, which is great, but he's also aware that that stuff's out there and he's probably going
Right.
to encounter it. And so we practice like peer pressure, right? Like when the whole world shut down with
Uh,
COVID and everybody was like, you have to get, and I'm not trying to be divisive, but everybody's like, you have to take this thing. And if you don't take this thing, you're a bad person. And I was like, holy crap, that's a lot of peer pressure. This is not my first rodeo. No. Right. And so for
right.
my kids to be able to watch me to say no to the whole wide world, they were like, oh, that's how you do it. That's a great
Yeah,
example, right?
right. 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 And well, I'm also, I would I share the same opinion. And I caught a lot of heat for it. But it's just, I think that's interesting. Practicing peer pressure. Um, and I say all this now. I feel like I got this plan,
Right.
but
It's
I'm
not going to
also
go that way.
exactly. But this is what I was telling you about. Like the part that I love, the part that I'm in love with is I have a plan, and the world is going to say, it's more like this, and I'm going to say, okay, like I'm going to try to just stick and move, stay nimble.
Yeah, just be present and in the moment and do your best.
Right, right, right.
So how can people get in touch with you, Ryan, if they want to connect?
Hey, okay, great question. RyanPenley.org. That's my website. It's got everything on there. I got my phone number and my email in my book. You can find that on Amazon. Man Up, Sober Up is the title. I'm Ryan Penley. I'm the author. If you go to my website, ryanpenley.org, that's me. That's my phone number. That's my email. I pick up, and so if you want to work with me, that's fantastic. If you want to call me, try not to make it a prank. So, but nonetheless, yeah, that's the way to do it.
That's awesome. Is there anything you'd like to share that we've not yet talked about today?
I would say if anybody out there is, say if there's somebody, and there's also, well, either if they're in trouble or suffering from addiction, or if they know somebody, and there's a very big chance of them knowing somebody, I'd like to say that like addiction can be a superpower if we use it for good. And so what do I mean by that? Like we can get addicted to cool stuff. So I think it can be a blessing, and it can also be your testimony once you get through the bad parts. So those things, realizing one, it's possible, and then also realizing that you can turn it into a superpower, it's important.
I think it comes down to choosing where to put your focus, right?
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, this has been wonderful, Ryan. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah. No, thank you very much.